Alright, so for this tutorial we're going to do a really quick solve of this big blocky thing, and the primary purpose of this video is to talk about path filtering. But I will be using lines to get the perspective, laying down some rough geometry that we can project onto, and then proceeding to filter our curves using the graph editor. So with that being said, let's jump into it. I'm going to track very fast. Okay, so we've done our tracking, and let's jump into some solving. I'm just going to go through this as fast as I can because the focus is not solving, the focus is looking at path filtering. But I might as well show you the quick solve of this as well. I'm suspicious a shot like this is not going to offer a whole lot of data for distortion, but let's see what it does. I'm going to go over to solver, automatic, slow but sure, why not? Let's see. Slow but sure just uses an older algorithm to apparently work harder, but honestly I don't notice a difference too often. It might work. I don't know. I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to hit go. Cool. I'm going to turn on distortion. I'm not going to use anything extra because there's no data outwards to even calculate this anyway. So I'm going to also switch to refine because it looks like I can work with what it gave me here to start with. It looks like it figured out what things are roughly doing. So let's hit go. And what did that do? My solve error, did it change? I don't think my solve even changed. Let me hit F3, L, lock to camera, and there is a very slight bit of distortion. It's there. I kind of believe the amount that's here because I'm kind of in between the positive and negative distortion of my lens. If I'm at the widest angle, I get negative distortion. If I'm at the longest, I get positive distortion, like what I'm getting here. And I'm kind of midway on my lens right now. Okay, so with that little bit of distortion, let's just go with it. I'm going to hit lens, come over here, I'm going to right click and turn off the lens grid. I don't want to see it. View, lens grid off. And now let's come over to add line. I am looking at this picturing that I want my x-axis to face this way, I want my z to face this way, and of course my y is going to face up. So let's go with a z line here in this older version of SYNTHEYES. My on z line is going to face this way even though I drew the line out that way. So I drew that knowing it would do that. That's kind of a short line, and I can't quite see the corner here. I don't know if I want to put a line there. So I'm going to put my other main axis line up here. Stop it right there on X. And the origin of my scene when I hit a line is going to be where these two lines intersect, right there, which again doesn't matter. Now let's go with some parallel Z lines. Right under the birds. This is kind of, that's not too bad. Okay, and now let's get some X lines. I am kind of rushing on this. Typically what you want to do is zoom in and make sure that your points are nice and snug on their lines. And let's get a couple Y lines. Parallel to Y. Parallel to Y. Let's see. Can I get this? Is this okay? It's kind of okay. Let's go with it. Oh, we gotta get this one. What a nice prominent line. Good. Okay, now that we have that, I'm gonna hit F3 just so we can see the snap into place when I hit a line. So let's hit a line. And hey, looks awesome. Now I have to lay down some geometry that I can project my points onto. So I'm gonna go F4 and come to 3D, and we're gonna go with planes. I'm just gonna draw this out with planes because it's easy. The solve actually did a pretty good job. Points are kind of flat. Let's expand this from the center just so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to drag this out to that corner. Actually, I'm going to make this plane a little bit bigger. I should do this from a pivot point, because if I scale right now, it's scaling from the center of that plane. I could turn on the padlock and then scale from this corner that I'm happy with. There we go. Maybe a little bit more. I'm holding control so that my scale goes a little bit slower. cool. That looks pretty good. I don't care that it's going over at the end. And let's get something down here. There are some better tools to do some modeling in SYNTHEYES. There's not many, honestly, but there could be a better way to place some of these bits of geo than I'm doing. I don't want to do any of the select point stuff because I don't trust the accuracy of a lot of points and depth, even though it looks pretty good here. I want to make perfect geometry and just snap my points to perfect surfaces. That's not too bad. I might just scale this maybe right here. Move it up and make sure it's kind of snapped over here, I guess. That's not too bad. And I'll project those points. I don't need the whole wall, but I'm going to get a surface over here. This one could be even dirtier. I don't even need that to be perfect. I'm spending too much time on that, honestly. So let's just match the height of the top plane. And now I'll bring it back. And we'll try to slide it across the top just so we can meet up with that corner. So what is that? Z axis. So Z. And see that we slide it over into that corner till it meets up with that tracker. Nice. I think that's all I'm going to do. I might as well get something here. One more plane. Okay, I'm sorry. One more plane. Okay, we're good. We're happy. Might as well make it look kind of crisp. Alright, so now we have a lot of points. If I hit F3, and let's go with orbit, just so I can zoom around and see what's going on. My points are a little bit small, so I'm going to come to the solver tab, drag world size up. If you hold shift, it goes a little bit faster. So we can see what our points are doing. Some of our points are hovering above and whatever and doing some things. This isn't the biggest free move, so some of the points are going to do some things that they want to do. But let's pretend that this is perfectly flat, which it could be. It could be. And project these points. So now let's take a few points that are relatively spaced out. We don't need everything. Honestly, we could do a lot of points. I'm going to do a lot of points. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take pretty much all of them. Does that line up? Oh man, it just lands on that geo. And we'll take the corners over here, and we'll take this because it hits some geo. And we're gonna, you know what? Yeah, let's just do it. Let's take a whole bunch of points. Not this one. I don't like that one. It's actually a pretty decent point. This one, because this plane is kind of overreaching, this won't land on that plane. But let's do it anyway, and we'll fix it in a moment. So now that I have all these selected, I like this one. There we go. Now that I have all these selected, I'm going to come up to Shot, Drop onto Mesh. Now, if you saw my video on basic point constraints, this was kind of an automated way to do it from the camera's perspective. So if I select my tracker, come to trackers, you can see we have coordinates and seed and lock point are set. And if I select that point, hit F3 and orbit around, so you could see the points hovering here, but underneath you could see our constraint actually landed on the mesh. If I go wireframe, hitting the pipe key, yeah, you could see that all of our upside down triangles are the points that drop themselves, and they will constrain to those positions. So let's go back to solver, and what I'm going to do now is check off constrain and hit solve. Now that we've solved it, our solve error has changed, and you could see, oh, I scrolled out. Let's go orbit. You could see what all of our points are now doing. They've all snapped into their positions and gave us a new position in space. And if I wanted to, I could scale this whole scene in Maya, which is what I prefer to do. I don't like scaling in SYNTHEYES. Nothing wrong with it, just a preference. So now that I've done that, we are now ready to get into path filtering. Alright, so now that I'm in the solver window, what I'm going to do is open up filtering control. This is where we do all the smoothing to our path our rotations and our zoom lenses and our object distances, this is where we do it. So what I'm going to do is also show off the graph editor, because we're going to want to monitor what the path is doing as we affect it. So I'm going to hit F7 on my keyboard, because then that gives me a floating graph editor. So the graph editor here. The graph editor is a nice way to see a whole lot of data on your trackers and your cameras and objects. This is where you can do a lot of troubleshooting, see if there's any spikes in animations, or, well, yeah, that's it. See if there's any spikes or jitters in your actual solves. So I'm going to collapse trackers, we're not looking at that today, and open up cameras and objects. So here we have camera 1. When I click it, we're greeted with some nice velocity. Velocity is how fast is the average speed that your camera is traveling across the frames. So if you happen to have a pop in your camera, you're going to see a spike in this curve. Right now it's a pretty smooth camera and there's kind of an average jitter going on with it. If I zoom in on the camera, you can see it's kind of doing a lot of very average motion, so our velocity has some very average motion. Notice you cannot mess with the velocity. You cannot minus out keys or add key. Oh my. I guess you can mess with it. I just learned something today. Look at this. I didn't know you can do that. Alright, well, let's ignore that right now. You can't minus it. I was correct on that at least. You're going to have to give me that. So now, I'm going to hide velocity. I don't want to troubleshoot like that. We want to look at the actual... wow, I'm still in velocity. Sorry. Solved path. Now, I just want to look at the camera path here. So you can see it's pretty small. So how do we expand it up so we can see what it's actually doing? I can double click the magnifying glass, or I could double click the hands, and you can see the different ways that these two things scale. So now that I see this, we can see what is going on with the path. That's pretty jittery, and we don't want to give that to any clients, because if we throw in a matrix object so we can see what the foreground is doing, hold on, bear with me, let me do that real quick. Wow, I wish I zoomed out a little bit for that. There we go. Now let's bring it down a little bit. Okay, now that we have a matrix object, let's take a look at what it does when I play. Look at how jittery that is. That is a big mess. If they wanted to put like something floating through the air, maybe some mist or haze or particles, maybe one of these birds blew up or something spontaneously and some feathers are going to be floating throughout the air towards camera. You don't want those feathers to jitter, right? No jittery deceased bird feathers. Alright, so yeah, that is what we want to fix. That is what we want to clear, because that's this jittery animation right here. You could see that over here we can grab this tool or whatever. I kind of like that one. It's kind of more universal if I remember correctly. Is it? Maybe I'm lying. Nope. I can select with that one. I can go move up and down, anything that I want, and yeah, make whatever adjustments I need. But we're not going to do this manually. If your camera path was so extremely screwed up, you could come and minus out any super big obnoxious jumps if you needed to, which I do quite often, and there will be a video on it coming up. But for now, we're not going to do anything manual here. We are just going to come back to solver, get filtering control, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to go X, Y, Z. And for this video, I might just stick with the default here. Actually, maybe not. So strength I don't touch too much. Strength, that's kind of easy to tell. If I hit smooth, hey, look at that. If I turn the strength down to like 0.2, like below half, it didn't do it as much. Let's reset so I get everything back to normal. X, Y, Z. What I touch is frequency. Frequency lets me choose whether or not I want to smooth out any super fine spikes or give it a much more overall smooth. If I turn this down to like 1 and hit apply, we smooth this a lot. Also, keep in mind, SYNTHEYES does this weird kinky thing at the end of the paths. I personally don't see a lot of software do that. A lot of software tends to account for that. But yeah, keep in mind that sometimes that'll happen. Sometimes I've honestly seen it not happen. People fight me on this, and I fight back. So let's go reset one more time, and I'm going to hit those translates again. Let's turn frequency up to like 15. So 15, you could see that I've gotten rid of, here, watch what happens here. So if I undo and redo, you could see that I've gotten rid of the sharp spikes, but we still have the general motion happening. So I can actually play right now, and you could see that our camera is doing much nicer work on the foreground here. On a shot like this though, I'm a little bit more comfortable on hitting it with a couple smooths, so I did. So let's reset the filter. If you don't reset this, every time you hit solve, it's gonna reapply the smooth to your curve. So make sure you always reset this filter after you've smoothed it. Alright, so now here's where things might get a little bit fun. This is hard to explain on a shot like this too. This is always hard to explain to people. But we have to, it looks smooth and it looks like it's sticking here. Technically, oh, it is easy to see here. Look at that. So you can see that there's a lot of jitter and shake now on the actual set. I really hope this isn't another problem that I might be having, but we'll see. But sometimes I export my plates with the wrong frame rate and then we get stepping issues, and I hope that's not this. But it looks like that's the jitter. We smoothed the path. The path is now straight, but the jitter was still in the rotations. So if I show the rotations, you see the same jitter is present there because that was part of the whole solve. So we don't need to smooth the rotations. We're just going to resolve the rotations, but keep this smooth path that we just made. The only thing I want to do is I want to clean up these last weird frames that SYNTHEYES did. So I'm going to clear those little spiky frames. And I don't feel like this one I could lift up a little bit. So let's go with the move tool. Lift it up a little bit, flatten it out. Maybe this one I'll give it that. Try to post pre-infinity it. That's alright at the end, I guess. Okay. So now, how do we solve for just the rotations? We want to come over to axis locks. I'm going to hit more. And here, this window, I'm going to see how well I can explain this. And we're also going to demonstrate things that you can do with this window. I'll see how well it goes. I actually don't know. I haven't planned this out very well. I didn't even think I was going to be going into this. I thought I was just going to do like, hey, the path filtering control and then leave it at that. But here I am, putting in extra work. Okay, so this window. This window is how you lock your camera path, or you can lock your rotations. And if you're doing object solves and they're jittering in Z space from the camera, you can smooth the distance and lock it here. So let's just do this and show what it is. So I'm going to turn on my position lock, but this lock doesn't have any data to lock to because this smooth path needs to be loaded into the seed path values. And the seed path values is this right here, your seed path. So if I expand this and click it, you could see that, actually, what am I looking at? Oh, solve path is on. There we go. So you can see here with the seed path, it's just flat curves. So if I have position lock on right now, it's gonna lock to this one value that's set here, and your solve is gonna screw itself up. So we need to get this, our smooth path. Why is it showing more stuff? Oh, let's just show the path. So we want to get this thing into seed path. So right here, how do we do that? We just hit get. So get solved path and save it as the seed path. Okay, so now when I scrub, you could see that we have the animation there, and you could see that we have it set in here as well. So seed values in SYNTHEYES is just the weird, it's basically just coordinates. When we drop the trackers, and in the last video I explained that the trackers have a coordinate and we can tell SYNTHEYES to lock to that coordinate, or we can go to unconstrained and SYNTHEYES won't lock to that. Well, that's what seed path value is. The seed path value is just, you your camera's position based on the smooth path, and we're telling SYNTHEYES to lock to it. So now that I've imported that path into seed path, and my position lock is on, by the way, turn position on the first frame, because this thing animates. If I turn it off partway through, you could see it flickers on and off. So I'm going to go to that frame and right click it just to clear that keyframe. There we go. Okay, so now that the lock is on, I got the smooth path loaded in, and we go to solver, see that constraint is turned on. Let's hit go. So now that I've solved, we see that our trackers on the weird concrete block thingy are back to normal. So really, we've finished this shot right now. So if that's all you wanted to know, you can get out of here. But I just want to show one more quick thing. So in this window, this right here, this column of numbers, so we talked about the lock, the seed path value, the button to actually import our curves into the seed path value. But what are these zeros right here? These are important. What they are is weighting. So since you have the path loaded here, you can tell SYNTHEYES to listen to this only a little or a lot. Let's say this. I'm going to hit F7. So let's go turn off seed path, because that's going to stay the same now. Let's look at solved path. Whoop. That's fine. Okay, so here's what this is. If I look at this, it says weight of soft lock, 60 nominal, or hard lock if 0. If I go 60, which is kind of like, hey, you smoothed it, well, let's listen to it kind of halfway. Now that it's 60, let's hit go. Look at that. We got some of that jitter back. So sometimes your camera might need a little bit of freedom to get a solve right. See, we got some jitter, but it's not as much as it was. Oh, I animated that as well. Let's right click that and do it on the first frame. Remember, do the stuff in the first frame if you can. So let's make it 60 and hit solve. So I guess this is what 60 looks like. Let's change it to 0, which is hard locking to this path. You really can't tell with those numbers, honestly. Those values are little, yeah, I don't know. So let's make this something like 20, maybe. Let's give it a shot. Okay, so 20 is like, yeah, we got a lot of that jitter. Let's try 30. See, we reduced it a little bit. Let's try get up to 45, I guess, maybe. Let's see. So watch this. Hey, look, we have some of the jitter. We reduced it again. And again, the higher you go, if I go up to 90 or 120 or something, I think the highest is like 120 for some reason. It's basically that smooth path again. I'm just going to change this to 0, so it's 100%. So there's no weighting if you make it 0. 0 means there's no weighting. It's just going to do whatever this is doing. So solve. Yeah, that's all it is. Okay, so I hope that I explained that well. That window's kind of tough to grasp. But we got a pretty damn nice looking solve on here. And you know what? Just for fun, let's put a big old water plane here. And you know what? Let's go 3D hole effects meshes off. Oh wait, no, hole effects meshes on, and then hole. And now I can move this whole scene, get it to the water level. There we go. So now we have this beautiful looking scene. Alright, that's about it. I'm kind of sick of being here. Later.